And today I want to talk about writing the non-human perspective. So, a lot of fiction, when you read it, science fantasy, science fiction, fantasy, epic fantasy, it kind of all does the same thing. And there are exceptions, of course, but generally, every story is from a human perspective. Now, you'll find other races, other species involved in these settings, and you might get snippets of their perspective, but the vast majority of the perspective is human. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. A human perspective is the easiest perspective to connect to for obvious reasons. It's human. It's the character has at some level undergone the same things that we have as human beings and has the same drives and potential motivations that we do. Alien perspectives are something that I like to write. And I do human perspectives as well, obviously, but I really enjoy getting into the alien mindset for these different cultures that I create. And you'll see almost everything I write, at least some part of it takes place from an alien or a non-human perspective, depending on the setting. And you don't have to make every species hugely different from humanity in terms of its perspective of the world. And in fact, if you're going to do for their perspective, you probably shouldn't. And what I do is they're very culturally different, they're very biologically different, but they have some similarities, enough similarities that human characters are able to say, once they get to know them, like, maybe these are people. And you see the same thing done in Star Trek. A lot of the races in Star Trek are in some ways similar to humans. And I'm not just talking about physical forms. In some ways, they're similar to humans. And it allows you to play with those connections, to play with what is different about us, what is the same. But writing these perspectives is very challenging, but it's also, you can do it on such a basic level in the beginning and introduce more stuff as you go. And it's all about word choice. So when, for example, using Zai from Agent, when the story is from her perspective, which this short story is pretty much all going to be from her perspective, but she never refers to anybody mentally when, in her head. She never thinks man or woman. She thinks male or female. Now, when she speaks, she says man or woman because she's very good at her job. But in her mind, she doesn't make the man-woman distinction. And technically, she'd be thinking in her native language, but we don't want to overcomplicate everything. So male, female. You can have mannerisms that are a little bit different, body language that works differently, and body language doesn't have to be that far off for not only the reader to notice, but for it to be alien to the characters. Because, for example, again with Zai's species, Zai doesn't do this because she's so good at blending in and has been doing it for so long that she's able to control her body language on every possible level. But her species will, if they're curious about something, they'll cock their head a little bit, not dramatically, but a little bit. And they have wings, and their wings are often used as a part of their body language. And this is something humans won't pick up on right away. They'll see it, but they don't understand it. But it's a language all of its own. And if you make these little differences, all of a sudden you're writing a perspective that's not human. And you didn't have to go dramatically out of your way to do it, but it's just the beginning. It's the foundation is body language, thought process, and the way they consider our cultures and our way of doing things. You want to write them as if, picture it as if you were writing humans observing aliens, but now you're writing an alien observing humans. It's the same thing. The way humans behave is strange to them. In particular with Zai's species is very long lived. So the way humans go through life is like quick. It's like finger snap quick, because they're like, and they're driven, and they don't take a while to do things. They make quick decisions. They do things on a schedule that to her species is like lightning fast. Like, wow, you just met this person and now you're married? What's that about? Even though, they've been seeing each other for, maybe 10 years or whatever. That's not much time in the perspective. Zai is young not super young, under middle-aged at almost 4,000 years old. So that's very alien. And you can play around with so much of that little stuff. It's the word choices, it's the body language, it's how do they perceive how we do things. And how could that seem strange to them is kind of the question that you have to ask. And eventually you're not even asking the question, you're just doing it. But, another example from the same species, while I'm talking about the species, human, and this comes up right away in Agent. Human divisions of race is a hugely foreign concept to them. And now Zai has been among humans for a long time. It's not the first time she's observed this, but she's thinking about it because of what's going on in the scene at the time. And it's just so weird to them, even after she's been here for 600 years. It's like, how are you dividing yourselves because this person's skin tone's a little bit different than that person's skin tone? They've got different hair. It's like the perspective is just makes it weird, because their species doesn't have racial divisions. They're just like, what? Who cares? The concept of racism is weird to them, where they're just like, what are you doing? Why? It's not even a why on like our level where we're like, hey, we shouldn't behave like this. It's why would you even conceive of, how does that even matter at all? It's just addressing things from a perspective that looks in humanity as weird. Basically, that's the easiest way of putting it. But then your word choice, your sentence structure, body language, little things that you have to think about pretty hard early on matter a lot, because the reader begins to pick up on these things, and they start to read the character's body language or mannerisms in the same way they would if they were interacting with them. So it's a way of showing, right, rather than telling. And it's something I really enjoy doing. It's one reason I chose to do this story from a non-human perspective, but also because the Invasion trilogy is primarily from a human perspective, and that's not normal for the setting, because I'm going to do a lot of stories from alien perspectives, but I want that introductory novel series to be basically human. And there will be basically human stories as well, and novels later on, but it's just something I like to do. Not everybody likes to do it, and certainly not everybody needs to do it. It's just something I enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.